Welcome back. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX. We are covering the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump. The ceremonies around the inauguration have already started. President Trump paid a visit to St. John's Church, a tradition followed by US presidents since James Madison. Let's get a word in from my editor-in-chief, Rishabh Gulati. Rishabh, these are grand celebrations being held in DC right now. There are over 200,000 people in DC to watch the inauguration of Donald Trump. How impactful is Trump's presidency in his second term, and how impactful is this going to be for US and the world?
Well, we're bracing for it. You're watching live visuals. This is inside the Capitol Rotunda. Obviously not as grand as it could have been because the people you're mentioning gathering in DC are gathered in stadiums because of the cold weather. 600 invitees, including a very interesting list of the who's who, not only of America, but of the global community at large. That's the entrance way in which people have been entering. I can tell you that the seats are now filled. We are about less than 90 minutes away from the inaugural ceremony, which of course will be pretty brief. We are not expecting the pageantry of the parades to the extent that have happened in the past, what is possible, what is not possible. But yes, you're going to see a transition of power. And for sure, Tom, there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of curiosity on what Donald Trump is going to do as soon as he sits on the in the Oval Office once again. What all is he going to sign? You're watching visuals on the left side of your screen. That is India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, who was there at the church ceremony this morning. I think he's in conversation there with Vivek Ramaswamy, who now takes over, in effect, a cabinet portfolio in a very interesting department, which is going to be a lesson for all of us. So a lot of excitement. Let's see now how this pans out once this formality, of course, is over and done with in the next 90 minutes, Tom.
Thank you, Rishabh. We are, as you can see, all the guests are gathering in the hall. Who is not there includes Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the UK, Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of Germany, and the French President Emmanuel Macron. Reena Sundar, founder of the DET Modern India. What is Trump trying to signify in not inviting these individuals?
I think he's signaling a lot of things, but in Norway we are following Germany very closely and the development of his political leadership. But we are very happy that the Indian Foreign Minister is there. But there are a lot of exciting things that we are curious to dig into once we know more which kind of take Trump is going to have on various issues that are going to be very relevant for Norway. So I hope later in this session we can talk about the pros and the cons. There are many views on Trump in Norway, both positive and negative. Some people say that there has not been any wars declared by Trump when he was president. And when you're talking about who has been invited, who has not been invited, some people also say that he likes strong men, which can be a very good thing in a time where the world is getting more and more polarized, where we have very strong leaders in Russia and China, that maybe Trump is the man who can also be able to make a deal with the big countries we might fear can also go to war with. Of course, being in Norway, we are very worried about Norway's trade with the US, because if Europe is weak, EU is weak, we have challenges in Norway. But we are very excited about this ceremony, and from Norway, the NATO president actually is represented, probably sitting there together with Mr. Jaishankar. So from Norway, we are really following the development in the US very closely.
Thank you very much. Jordan Cope, we are joined by a political expert. We have heard that Joe Biden has written a letter to Donald Trump, as per tradition that presidents have. There also is thousands of people protesting against Trump being inaugurated in the UK. Will this tradition be as smooth as it seems, and what's the energy in the country right now?
It seems Joe Biden has been fairly hospitable, at least as of now. He welcomed Trump to the White House for a tea time, and quote unquote, I believe Trump might have even felt at home. So it's good to see at least some sense of civil discourse at this hour. The last election was obviously one very much of tension throughout the country. But it's also important to note that there's some internal tension right now within the Democratic Party between Joe Biden and the Obamas. It's suspected that Joe Biden was actually pushed out of the election, perhaps in part by the Obama family, to pave the way for Kamala Harris to run. So, of course, there's always going to be protesters at every inauguration. But so far, it doesn't seem quite as tense as when Trump was inaugurated the last time. So, of course, more will be seen later today as the inauguration commences in just about, I believe, a few minutes, an hour and a half or so. But we'll see. But it doesn't seem as tense as some have been trying to portray it.
Daniel Wagner, who is the CEO of Country Risk. I was wondering, Trump has planned to sign over 200 executive orders in the first 200 days, the now slim majority, Republican majority in Congress. How will a large number of executive orders signed by Trump on his first day impact the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches?
There are going to be a number of challenges that will be raised by this blitz of executive orders on the first day, and it will set a record, presumably. Chief among them, of course, is TikTok. And the idea that both the Congress and the Supreme Court have passed and upheld this law, and now Trump is keen on extending TikTok's ban for 90 days to see if ByteDance will ultimately sell themselves to an American buyer. They didn't do that. They had 9 months to do it. I'm not sure they're going to do it now. They've said they're not going to actually do that. So I'm not sure what the ultimate purpose is, except it's troublesome, very troublesome, that a major donor to Trump is a 15% owner in ByteDance. And Trump, who initiated the proceedings against TikTok in his first administration, now all of a sudden has had a change of heart. So these are the types of things that are going to raise a lot of questions and eyebrows in Washington. I think we're going to see tension between the executive and judicial and legislative branches throughout the Trump presidency. There can be no doubt about that because he's such an erratic leader, and some of what he wants to do is contrary to American law. So I'm as curious as anyone else.
We can now see Trump's vehicle making its way to the ceremony. But staying on this topic of executive orders, there is an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in the US. Economists have warned against this biggest deportation plan in history that Trump has in the pipeline. What are the challenges that might arise executing this? Hugh Dujan, Senior Director of International Organization Affairs at the UNSC. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, hello, thank you. We have millions of illegal aliens in the United States. The immediate question is about whether they're deported. The fact of the matter is the United States is not a place that has a second-class citizenship. When you have illegal aliens who are allowed to stay under ambiguous circumstances for whatever economic impact it might be for our business sector or cultural or otherwise, it makes them into a second-class citizenry. So I'd like to put that on the table, that what we're trying to do is to make sure that everyone in the United States has the equal opportunity and unfettered freedom, unintimidated freedom to pursue their goals. And we do that through legal immigration, through orderly legal immigration, not by creating a subclass of second-class American citizens, which has never been in the American tradition. So I applaud President Trump for taking this on for the sake of our American identity and the example that we wish to put around the world of freedom, unfettered by intimidation. When you're living in a country, you're in an illegal status, undocumented, some will say, you are actually intimidated into doing things that a person otherwise wouldn't do. You're living secretly, you're being cautious, you're not being honest, etc. And it's a culture of distrust that evolves. So I'm looking forward to the actions that the president has identified through his team. These are all well-seasoned immigration officials, having worked for him 8 years ago. And also he's very familiar with the issue and the topic. So I'm eager to see the creative result. He's a humane person in the end. I don't expect to see any any very brutal type of actions taken, but we will have to use the law on the books and to make it real so that fairness is available to those who do seek to come in under the rules, and that the rest of us are protected against individuals of whom we know very little and several of whom have proven to be very dangerous to American society.
Charlotte Littlewood, as we watch Trump's car roll through the streets of Washington surrounded by guards, I wanted to talk about Trump's favourite word, which he has stated is tariff. What could imposing new tariffs have on the global economy and trade relations with other key trading partners like Mexico, like China and Canada? He throws around this word. What do you think about this?
I think it's very concerning, especially for Canada and Mexico, when he's talking about a 25% tariff. Here in the UK, there's been mention of 10 to 20%, which is really concerning considering they're our largest trading partner. And in post-Brexit Britain, it's a really important trading partner for us. But more broadly, finding it hard to know what Trump will or won't do, seeing as he is quite erratic in what he says, and he'll often do 360s. So we're here in the UK wondering, is he or is he not going to support Ukraine? Is he or is he not going to continue to support NATO? Is he or is he not going to be firm in support of Taiwan with China? And is he or is he not going to impose really harsh tariffs that could really harm our economy, interest rates, inflation? So there's a lot of concern, but there's also a lot of uncertainty, and time will tell.
We are also joined by Mark Sofer, former Israeli ambassador to India. Mark, how might Trump's policies impact US alliances and international partnerships, particularly those formed during the Biden administration, like Ukraine, for example?
Well, of course, Ukraine and the Middle East are today's hotspots in the international arena. There's no need not telling anything new there. I should also say I'm certainly not a government spokesman today, very far from it. I think what we've heard from the earlier speakers, and I subscribe to it entirely, is that the unpredictability is the name of the game. We don't really know where it's going. He can have a position one day and another position the next day, and that's what we've seen in his first administration. And here too, in the Middle East, he professes to be, and I believe he is, a great friend of Israel. But I don't think he's a great friend of Netanyahu. There's an enormous amount of bad blood that has run between them. And so that has to play out one way or the other there too. So I think that the global arena will change, first of all, in tone more than anything else. There's going to be a lot of table hammering and bashing on fists on the screens. And I think also in substance, because he looks at things in sort of, America will run this place. We will tell everybody what to do. And they will listen to us, and maybe to a certain extent, the world is in need of that right now. Certainly, we are in the Middle East.
Professor Madhav Nalapat, staying on the topic of foreign policy, Trump can be seen as hawkish in his foreign policies. What do you think? Do you think this is what the world needs right now? Obviously, we have just seen a ceasefire with Gaza and Hamas.
Look, the fact of the matter is this is going to be a single term. Donald Trump has made it clear he's not going to fight for another term. And I think that's very wise, because if he did so, he'd meet the same fate as Joe Biden. Secondly, he'll have a very strong interest in ensuring a good administration and in ensuring that J.D. Vance, his chosen vice president, will succeed him in the presidency. It's an extremely powerful job. And I don't think Trump wants people who are completely opposed to him to take over that job. As for Israel, frankly, I have no doubts whatsoever that Trump is committed to a destruction of what is called the axis of resistance. The clerics in Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. He's committed to that. And I don't believe he's going to go away from that commitment, irrespective of who is the leader of Israel. I think he's going to ensure that that is kept. And very importantly, it's important for him to have a very successful first term to ensure that J.D. Vance takes over as his successor. But I think a lot of J.D. Vance's success or failure will depend on Trump's term. And you saw, frankly, Kamala Harris was badly dragged down by the errors made by Biden, including, may I point out, in foreign policy. I mean, his support for Ukraine, for example, at a time when actually Taiwan is much more under threat. And Taiwan, or if you look at this way, support for Ukraine to get back territory, it lost in 2014. I mean, all these years, it didn't have that territory, and there was nothing going on against European security. So I think that was resented by the American people. They wanted that particular assistance instead of diverting it to Ukraine. And may I point out that Taiwan is a much more important priority for United States security interests. And I mean, for example, security interests in the knowledge industry, AI, etc. All these industries that we are hearing about so much about it now. Taiwan is critical in that. Taiwan is critical in both hardware and software, very critical in that. So from that point of view, is way more important. And what did we see? We saw Biden showering money on Ukraine, or rather weapons on Ukraine, and showering money on those who are making them in the US.
I do apologize for
hardly anything compared to that. No gift to Taiwan whatsoever. Everything the Taiwanese are getting is bought and paid for, and the number of what they're getting, the number of items, is much less than what's given to Ukraine. So I have no doubts that Donald Trump is going to work hard to be a successful president, and he'll want to have a smooth succession and a smooth successor.
I do apologise to interrupt, Professor Nalapat. We can see now Donald Trump has arrived. We see many of his staff around him. I want to pass to my editor-in-chief, Rishab Gulati. How do we think that this is going to unfurl?
Well, the ceremony itself is not very long. It's going to be done in half an hour. The exciting things happen immediately after, because you mentioned a lot of executive orders. Remember, American democracy is as complex as ours. Sitting here where I am in New Delhi, it's not that the president has untrammeled powers to do whatever he wants. Everything that he issues in executive order is open to congressional review in many aspects. So is everything going to get implemented? No. Will there be roadblocks? Yes, but you'll get an intent and purpose of what the priorities are. And you're getting an intent and purpose in the messaging that you mentioned. Why, for example, is a Nigel Farage there? Who is the choice of the people who've been chosen to invite? And it is indicative, as a lot of posts by Elon Musk have also indicated, that there is a push globally of having more politically aligned governments in other major European powers. At least support is coming more vocally than ever before, in both in substance and in style that we are seeing. So you are seeing what is an important exercise and shall remain an important exercise on the face of the planet, no matter where we are living. You are seeing a demonstration of democracy, for however broken the system seems from both within and without. It is a system that has withstood the test of time. This is the best example of a system we've got in terms of how to do peaceful transitions of power, regardless of how polarized the landscape might be. This is an important thing for the rest of us. It's equally important for people who are sitting in America to recognize that America will need friends, allies or not, but will need friends in the challenges that now are up before the world. And those challenges are serious. We don't want 2025 to be a war of more escalated conflicts. We are a world that has still just come out of COVID. We are a world that's still trying to figure out what the economic future will be. We don't understand AI. We don't understand yet quantum computing. We have to chart a new path into space. And we have to now put the track back onto the Indo-Pacific. If one thing, the conflicts of the old have been revived, the conflicts of NATO, of the Cold War. The real Cold War, ladies and gentlemen, is going to happen with China. It's already started.
Mark Sofa, as we are seeing Trump surrounded by his allies, including Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, we know that Xi Jinping's VP Han Zheng is also in attendance. What does this say about the individuals that Trump is putting in front of the world stage?
Well, it's first of all the biggest show in town for many years, and I think that as we just heard, the elevation of Trump, or the assumption of his of office, is a huge event. It's an international event, it's a global event. And I think that we have to look at it in that sense that all global leaders should be there or are there, except for those who, for one reason or another, probably personal in the case of the UK, maybe in the case of France, etc., are a little bit wary of actually being there. And Netanyahu, incidentally, I should say, is not there, but that's because we're in the middle of the Trump negotiated, to a large extent, hostage deal that's going on right now. And there's a lot going on in the country. I don't know whether he was invited or not. The newspapers are the press is sort of not in abeyance one with the other, so it's difficult to know. So I think that this is the biggest show in town. I think it's not really surprising that all the who's who of international leadership is there, and I don't think that says much more than that. I think he'll take the policy that he has forward vis-a-vis China. The fact that the Chinese leader is there doesn't mean that he'll be pro-Chinese by any means. You've heard about the Taiwan problem, etc. And I think the same goes all the way down the line. He'll be Trump, and he'll take his policy forward, and he'll take his MAGA forward, make America great again, not only internally but externally. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of us were very saw it in a little bit of a difficult terms prior to this. I think today the world needs a little bit of strong leadership after the rather weak approach that Biden showed, especially towards the end of his presidency.
Rina Sunder, we are also seeing images of Elon Musk there at the inauguration. How big of a part is he expected to play with his Doge?
This is really interesting. Actually, this has been debated in Norway as well. The fact that Trump now are inviting another kind of people on board than he did his last term. So the challenge here will be how will Trump navigate when it comes to democracy? Because he's now inviting strong voices from the private sector on board, and technology is going to play a huge part. Somebody in the panel already touched up on TikTok being shut down in the US. But we are more concerned in Norway about the humanistic and democratic principles. How will Trump follow them with people like Musk and other very strong personalities who might not be diplomats as such? So it will be an exciting time. But as other people in the panels also touched upon, the trade barrier is really what is the highest concern for Norway, because I'm from Norway. And the Norway's relationship with EU, how will that play out if Trump decides to play a very tough game when it comes to tariffs?
Daniel, I wanted to come in and ask about Trump's relationship with other international leaders, particularly China. How do we see the future relationship with President Xi Jinping? He obviously has his VP there at the event. What do we see the future holding for the China and US relations?
Well, in spite of the history that the two leaders have, I think there's every reason to believe that both of them want to start off on the right foot in this second go-around. As you know, bilateral relations between the US and China are at an all-time low, and one wonders if it can get much worse. I think it can. Xi, of course, is preoccupied with the proposal that Trump has made of imposing 60% tariffs on all Chinese-made goods. And that would be devastating to the Chinese economy, and it's going through a very difficult time already. So Xi has to be preoccupied with that. This also, of course, then Xi knows will have an impact on American consumers. So I imagine the discussions that the two of them are having will include those two dynamics. I think one of the things that's really interesting also is that Trump's second term will coincide with 2027, which is the date that Xi has said he wants his military to be prepared to invade Taiwan. Were that to happen on Trump's watch, it's going to be very interesting indeed to see what his reaction will be. The stakes are so high and he's so unpredictable, there's just no way to know in advance how that will play out.
Hugh DeJean, we see there Trump and Biden all smiles walking in to the inauguration. This most of the time obviously is not the case. How will Biden be viewed? Will he be viewed as just a stepping stone to the Trump administration? And what challenges might his administration, how will his administration defend its legacy amid Trump's rapid rollbacks?
Well, I'm not sure Biden has much of a legacy to chronicle yet. If time helps him, that's great. We're looking forward to having the American presidency log-in legacy of historic nature. I can't say anything jumps to mind, really. This last week, Biden made a very strong effort to have a successful outcome in the Gaza hostage deal. As a parting piece of legacy, I wish him well on that point. The real challenge is going to be the implementation of that Gaza deal, and whether that deal was so wonderful as we are told it is. I believe Biden is going to be looked at in the rearview mirror, perhaps with some admiration, but I think it's going to take a while to find out where and why. I think in the immediate term, once we do get some of our hostages back to the United States, we're going to find that 4 of them are dead. This is not something that happened when Jimmy Carter was president and Reagan came into office. The next day, all of the hostages from the Iranian embassy returned to the White House and they were all alive. When we get the bittersweet reality that 4 of our 7 Americans come home dead, I think there'll be some anger in the rearview mirror to the Biden administration for having overseen such a disastrous thing as the invasion of Gaza and the invasion of Ukraine and the horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan. So I think the legacy is going to be very difficult to overcome those parting shots on the global stage, not to speak of the economic difficulties Americans face at home. I've seen a remarkable turnaround this last few weeks on the American culture, all of a sudden taking to the mega movement in a way that was totally forbidden and self-censored up until just a few months ago. I think the mindset is such that the perception of public disapproval for Trump is no longer the case. I think there's a great relief among many people, not just his advocates, to see a new day, to see a new opportunity and inflection point, if nothing else, on the American horizon and for the global horizon to come to terms with the problems we face today, not look in the past. I think the question of TikTok right now is very interesting, how it falls on the inauguration day as almost a marker, so to speak, as a change of administration, the change of regard to what is a Chinese tool on the American people, a really strong inflection point that might prove very decisive in marking the difference between the Biden era and the forthcoming Trump era.
Charlotte, I wanted to ask, 4 years ago, almost this time, we saw a riot go on at the Capitol. Trump has said within this first day he's planning on pardoning the individuals involved in the Capitol 6 riot. What precedent does this set?
I think it's a really worrying precedent for democracy. And one of the panelists here has already spoken about how this is a demonstration of democracy today. But I find that there's irony in that today when we see what happened 4 years ago and the mass pardoning that Trump is talking about. It was a direct attack. Some would describe it as a terrorist attack, being that it was violence to persuade politics in a different direction. It would fulfill our definition of terrorism. And to now look at pardoning these people, I think four working officers at the time have committed suicide since. So we're talking about the toll on the people that were involved, and just the act itself of attacking Capitol Hill violently for political ends. You can draw whatever conclusion you want from that, but this doesn't represent democracy, quite the opposite, and it makes the feeling of today, I think, very different to what it would normally represent.
Thank you very much. We have ran out of time. You will be joined for the rest of the telecast by my colleague Megha Sharma. Thank you very much, and keep watching NewsX for all our coverage on today's events. Thank you.